there's no two ways. She didn't rehearse her answers. Seriously. Then she tries to answer it, guys. So she does an independent interview with some newscaster. He asks her, how is she gonna bring down the cost of, gas, groceries, all that? She gave the exact same answer she gave at the debate. And it was an answer, but it didn't address the issue at all. I grew up in a construction, people work construction, which, that's not true either. I think her father's he's a professor of Berkeley or something.
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
It was quite the rush up at the meeting last night, I heard. I'm surprised Peter let it go on.
Time check
Peter
is
didn't
6:30.
interject at all.
Darn. What do you say, gang? Well, you lose track of time.
No, he did.
Well, guess what? Mark,
What did he say?
are
What exactly?
we live?
Testing. Oh, yes. Little Barry White here, Keith Mortimer. Well, welcome everybody to the Thursday, September 19th Town Board Workshop. We have three agenda items tonight. And you're going to hear a lot from Pat Stevens, our highway superintendent, and he seems to be the master of ceremonies on all of them. But I think that, either Mark Stein and or Keith Mortimer, our town engineering staff, will be involved in this too. So I'm going to hand the baton to Pat Stevens. He's going to do a presentation on the stormwater management plan, which is very timely considering what we had happen last Monday.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah, it's definitely when this program gets seen the most, and you touched on it, Mark and Keith are playing a big role in this program now, assisting me. I am still officially the coordinator, but a lot of the heavy lifting in the day-to-day is handled by them and jointly with us. So try to stay on track here. There's going to be a lot of me talking tonight, so I apologize in advance. But so the first presentation we're doing is on our MS4 program. So the town of Webster is a MS4, so we're required to operate as a municipal, operate our own municipal separate stormwater system, which is what MS4 stands for. We basically manage a stormwater management program, or a SWAMP. There's various different requirements. Earlier this year in January, a new permit got adopted. So we're moving through the early stages in the first process of updating our past practices and program to match those requirements. So that's been a extra lift this year, which is why I'm really glad that we have Mark and Keith on staff to work through it. I'm not sure I'd get through it on my own, probably wouldn't. So it's really a lot of the same items, but updating them, some new requirements and things of that nature about the program, some additional reporting requirements and things like that. We're getting very familiar very quickly though, because as many of you know, we did have an EPA audit a little while ago where they came in to specifically look at this program, the compliance and the practices that we have with it. I was quite pleased with the program that we had in place and the progress we'd made toward the new permit. So I think most of that went pretty well. But so that's the SWIP program. The major components to the program are permits and coverage. There's special conditions. There's the SWAMP requirements that I just mentioned, the stormwater management program. Record keeping and reporting and evaluation is a big part. And then the 6 minimum control methods are the other component to it. We have one of the key sections is permit authorization. So the town of Webster, as an MS4, authorizes permits for various developments and activities throughout the town in compliance with the general permit that's referenced there, which helps control the stormwater runoff. So we mentioned the heavy rainfall the other day. These facilities and program is designed to control as much of that runoff created through development in a responsible manner so that we don't degrade our waterways or cause any additional flooding, much like we saw last week or on the 9th. So the town of Webster is an operator. We have traditional land use control, and we must follow the outline in Part 1 of the general permit. The town is exempt from the Part 7 of the permit based on the way it's currently written. We do not have any TMDL impaired waterways at this time. Special conditions, so there are some impaired waterways within the town of Webster that do fall under the special conditions section where they need special review and sometimes additional BMPs and practices that need to be put in place. There's minor trips for Rondequoit Bay, the Rochester E-Bayment. Those are the two main waterways that are currently identified. Those are both on the west side of town and have to do with the bay and the runoff there. So the swamp, the overall program requirements, the sections of that are a section of implementation and then a staffing plan. So that has actually helped a lot internally. For a little while there was only 1 or 2 staff working on it. Now we have several to do some of the checking and reviewing of the plans to make sure we stay in compliance with this program. We have to make sure that the program that we have is available to the public. It's currently on our website in a few different places. It has to incorporate the minimum control measures. There's a mapping component, which we utilize our GIS program for that. That is available at Town Hall. If you go there, we are able to assist you with viewing the different mapping and controls that we have for our stormwater ponds, features, drainage ways, things of that nature. That is ever evolving. That's an area where we do have some work to do as far as tailoring some of the features that we have mapped specifically to this program so that they match up with what the program is looking for a little more clearly. Right now we just have a lot of data on a lot of different infrastructure, and it needs to be labeled a little bit better and organized, but it is in there. There needs to be a section on our legal authority as it ties to our code and our ability to enforce, which is the next section, enforcement measures and tracking. So we have to keep track of active construction sites as well as post-construction monitoring. Maria has had a big hand in reaching out to our privately owned post-construction stormwater facilities and getting annual permits for those. All new developments end up with an agreement directly with the town that they will maintain their facilities, which are typically ponds and infiltration basins, things like that, to the state standard, which is a nice clean way to do it. And they submit annual reports on that to track it. Internally, we're still monitoring right around 120 publicly owned ponds in various different developments that get usually annual inspections. They're on a mowing schedule for maintenance, and then we're able to do some more sizable projects, desilting, vegetation removal on several each year as well, based on need. If they're in good condition, we don't spend time working on them, but in general, many do need some more work, and we continue to try to take on more and more of that work to get them in better condition. We have a record keeping and reporting and evaluation component. All the records we have of inspections and things of that nature need to be kept for 5 years. They are available to the public. An annual report is filed electronically every year. And then we keep a interim progress report on hand twice a year. The swamp must be reevaluated every 5 years. There's definitely sections and times when we see things in the field, we see situations that happen, and there definitely does call sometimes for an adjustment on how we look at things, which things we look at, and how thoroughly we look at them. So it is sort of ever evolving in making sure we're learning from the situations that come up and implementing them into our overall program to make it as effective as possible to eliminate deficiencies, and then basically document all of those statuses and requirements. So I mentioned the 6 minimum control measures. They are education and outreach is the first one, public involvement and participation. So those two kind of fall into what we're doing right now. Trying to get out in our public forums the best we can to communicate this information to the public, let them know that it's available, put these presentations online so they can be pulled down later, and sort of do as much outreach as we can. There's a lot of stuff. We're connected with the Monroe County Stormwater Coalition, and they do a lot of effort on that front as well. They do a lot of advertising, posting things in public places, innovative field, all over the place, just to try to get some awareness out about this. That's the public component. Minimum measure 3 is illicit discharge detection and elimination. So that's if we have sediment-laden water or any other kind of discharges that are not supposed to be going into our water, that we have a way to identify those, allow the public to clearly communicate those to us in a fast, efficient way. Primarily right now, most of the stormwater-related discharge items are coming through the highway department. We do have a 24-hour answering service, and we do perform the drainage maintenance on all of our own ponds. So if you do have a question about that, right now the most efficient way is to contact the highway department, and we will come out and take a look at the situation that you're concerned about and hopefully get you an answer on whether there is action to be taken, or better clarification of what you're seeing and what you're dealing with. We are doing a lot of that right now. There's a big concern in town because of the water levels that rose the other day during the nearly 6 inches of rain that fell in a short period of time. So we've been out looking at a lot of different situations, and there are times when there is something to be adjusted and addressed, and sometimes with the level of storm we had, it was just high water, and everything actually worked the way it should. It was just extremely high event. So we're seeing a little bit of both right now, but definitely call if you have questions. Then we have the minimum measure for a construction site, stormwater runoff control. That's one that is dealt with daily for us. We have roughly 17 active construction sites right now that have active permits around town, ranging from subdivisions to large commercial sites. We get weekly and sometimes twice weekly reporting on those. We review those situations and make sure that any of the issues are being addressed, so that when we do have a large rain event, we don't have discharges of sediment or anything else from these sites. So that's one we deal with every day. Then we have the post-construction stormwater management. I kind of touched on that before, that we reach out to privately owned parties to get annual reports, and then we do our own internal reporting on the ones we have. Those are primarily the existing ponds, infiltration basins, some green infrastructure here and there in town that we track and manage. And then minimum measure 6 is pollutant prevention and good housekeeping. So that comes in at our facilities, making sure our facilities are doing what they need to do. Building drains are going to the sewer, not to the storm. We're doing anything we can to have our own stormwater facilities for our impervious surfaces, and maintaining them the way we're supposed to. So that's number 6. Oh, that's right. I forgot I had them all broken down. I did them all right there, didn't I? So this is going to kind of be a repeat of what I said, but a little bit more elaboration. Part of the public outreach through the Stormwater Coalition that I mentioned, they do newspaper, radio, storm drain markers. They have a campaign for H2O Hero, which is their sort of mascot symbol that they put out there to try to get information out annually. And they also put out pamphlets, public involvement, leaf pickup. Obviously something that we've already started to get calls about here, as a few of the leaves have started to fall. We usually don't start those operations till closer to Halloween, but that program is where we're picking up leaves and recycling them instead of having them in the drains and in the waterways of the town. We do pharmaceutical collection. We do household hazardous waste drop-off, which actually just happened in Penfield, where we assisted a couple weeks ago, or maybe even last weekend. And then we have the e-waste drop-offs. Minimum measure 3, the illicit discharge. Like I said, we enforce a section of our code that gives us legal authority to do so. We put out information on how to identify them and how to eliminate them. And then we make sure that we're keeping our reporting up on any situations like that. The construction sites, as I said, we have several active sites in town where we monitor pretty much all aspects, keep an inventory, and do inspections. The post-construction, there's public and private. We do the inventories, we make sure they're maintained. The pollutant prevention and housekeeping, minimizes exposure, reacts to spills. We have our standard operating procedures that we follow to make sure stuff like street sweeping falls into that good housekeeping section as well, which we are doing constantly. That's the majority of the information on our MS4 program. So questions? And here's the email, as I mentioned, to contact us with any other questions that the public might have viewing this.
How much would all these cost? Do you have that?
The cost to manage the program?
Yeah, and also too, can I ask another question?
Yeah,
You can
As
ask
well.
as many as you'd like, Janine.
that's correct.
Seeing that we hire a new, engineer in our town and everything, so is there any way that we can cut back on outsourcing for engineer to cut down the cost?
Absolutely, right, so with Keith coming on board and getting familiar, we've already decreased the outside use of engineers pretty dramatically. It's hard exactly to put numbers to, but we're primarily managing the program now, so I would say it's down already 80 to 90%. So we're already cutting in a big way to that outsourced program, which is thanks to these guys right here for jumping right in and getting involved right away. So I know Keith has a more specific timeline for completely pretty much moving away, except for special projects, and it's moving right along. We're making very good progress on that. I'm very happy with how they've stepped in. So that's definitely way down. We don't track the efforts on this specifically as far as town staff and things of that nature, but it's hefty. You know, the management of the MS4 program is kind of just bestowed upon us by the DEC, and same from them from the EPA at that level, and there isn't really any direct funding sources for it provided. It's up to the townships to fund it. So we work it into our day-to-day, and it's covered in our operational budget, but it's not broken out. It kind of falls under our construction review for development and sort of the daily tasks that each staff member has is some of these items. So it's kind of hard to quantify exactly what the cost is, but it does take a lot of time, a lot of our time.
And Pat, what I will say, and Charlie, I think is the right term, if you go and look at what MS4 and what the DEC has come up with as far as regulations over the last 20 or 30 years, they almost all fall into what we call unfunded mandates, non-funded mandates from New York State.
Well put.
Is that what they're called, unfunded mandates?
Yes.
All right, everybody knows what
Yeah.
those are? So, yeah, it is hard to really quantify state government DEC regulations that are somewhat, here you go, town, you have to, well, I'm not gonna be a repeat of what he just presented. We have to go and figure out how to execute those at our cost, however we do that. Whether it's staff or outsourced engineering firms like we were doing before Keith and Mark came on, all of that. And I know that's one of your fun topics, Charlie, the unfunded mandate.
Yeah, this is, like you said, actually, it's probably, I think, the last 20 years closer. The state and federal governments imposed not just regulations, but actually laws. We had
that's law.
to enact an entirely new chapter and put it into our code
Yeah.
regarding this, so.
Yeah, and we're having to amend it as a part of this, because of the ever-changing
Right.
updates. The new permit does have more requirements. There's more to do there than there was previously. That kind of continues. Yeah. it's
And Webster
very
being
interesting.
Webster, we have a little more work than the average.
You got it.
township.
It's large.
It's
Yeah, it's
over-
large.
It's more onerous on a town like Webster because
Absolutely.
what else can we call it? We're a wet town.
Right.
And I mean, that's the best description I can use for it, Deneen. We're a wet town, and we found that out, in spades last Monday, the 9th. What do we have, 6 inches of rain in 2 to 4 hours?
I believe it was 5.7, but yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the amazing thing is the drainage systems that we have in place handle it pretty darn well.
Yeah, we definitely sell water in places that we probably haven't in the last 3 or 4 decades, but it didn't stay there for a
Right.
prolonged period of time, and that is the system working.
Well, we could never build a system that's built to handle 6 inches of rain because it would cost $100 million plus for us
Well, you
to
shouldn't,
build that.
well, you shouldn't, right? Because
Right.
that's overkill for one
Yeah.
day a year, you know, there's a balance in there. But to oversize things to that magnitude, really
Right.
would be very detrimental financially to everything that we do.
Johnny, anything?
No,
Well, this is going to sound like a broken record, but next up tonight is, believe it or not, Pat Stevens, the Superintendent of Highways, on New York State ACT legislation. I'm sure he'll explain what that acronym is. Its effects on equipment purchasing for Webster and potential equipment purchasing amendments to implement. Back to you, Pat.
Yeah, kind of keeping a little bit in the same theme of legislation and things that have come up and are now affecting the town of Webster. So the ACT legislation is the Advanced Clean Truck legislation, which affects us because of what you see there, a whole bunch of trucks. We have 24 full-size trucks right now that can go out plowing on the road. Technically, 6 of them are spares, and there's 18 frontline, but it's a very, very large fleet that will continue to grow with the town in the foreseeable future. So the Advanced Clean Truck Act is New York State legislation mandating that a certain percentage of truck manufacturers' sales be ZEVs, zero-emission vehicles. And the truck manufacturers that we buy our large trucks from are primarily large truck manufacturers. They don't have a lot of variation in their product. There's some, but almost all of them are medium to large-sized trucks, which is what this legislation impacts. The legislation was originally developed in California. It was adopted in New York in 2021, and its first year of implementation is in 2025. The implementation for this program, it sets a requirement of a certain percentage of sales for each manufacturer in the state of New York each year, starting in 2025 and going to 2035. And in 2035, so the first year, the requirement is 11%. So we currently are buying Western Star brand plow trucks that come with the plows and the one-way. They're about $305,000 a piece currently. Western Star is required to sell 11% of zero-emission vehicles in the state of New York this year in order to continue to sell the diesel trucks that are coming in. So if you break that down into smaller quantities, it would be, 11 out of 100 vehicles sold have to be zero-emission vehicles. There's quite a few issues with that that we'll kind of get into here a little bit as we move along. Then you see that the requirement by 2035 would be that 75% of the trucks that they sell in New York State be zero-emission vehicles. So where things currently stand with the manufacturers are that they don't have the sales to support this. So there's no major heavy-duty truck manufacturer that currently has a zero-emission vehicle that to fill enough to sell to fill the orders of the traditional heavy-duty. So the diesel trucks that are needed for snow and ice removal can't be sold because there's not enough zero-emission vehicle sales. The big part of this is that there's a tech gap. There is not currently a zero-emission vehicle that is viable for snow and ice operations as we see it in the state of New York. It does not exist. Because of it's required to run for long hours with minimal breaks, and it has a hydraulic PTO equipment. There was an article that I read probably 6 months ago. It was actually forwarded by Monroe County that talked about New York City doing a trial run with this with their garbage trucks, which they also use to plow with in the winter. The trucks were viable for refuse pickup in the summertime. They'd run about 12 hours on a charge. When they put them out for snow and ice removal, those same trucks, the same batteries, lasted 2 hours before they had to be recharged. So that's the technology part that isn't there. They're not able to go for the durations that we would need here.
what was the charging time for those? Was it in the article, the charging
It might
time?
be in there, but I didn't remember the charging time, and the charging time comes down to your infrastructure.
Right.
Say I have 24 of these, to have 24 high-speed charging stations in a single facility is millions of dollars in infrastructure upgrade just so I can get the power. So that's another major component to this.
Thank you, Albany.
Yeah. So there's currently not any short-term options. We've heard that, you know, some private truck manufacturers may basically go buy trucks in other states or register them in other states to try to work around this and complete the work that they need to do. We have got copies of several letters to the governor and the EPA from the New York State Automobiles Dealers Association, Trucking Association of New York, and the American Truck Dealers Group, but really we haven't seen any movement to make any concessions or adjustments to this legislation right now. So the impact. Right now, our truck suppliers are telling us we cannot order the trucks that we need for 2025. The 2025 model, if I was to order the same truck that I need, because there's not an alternative, would come through with a title that states it cannot be initially registered in New York State or California. Right now, they currently say California, but it will say cannot be registered in New York State on the title for the vehicle.
Wow.
So our fleet of over 30 medium to heavy-duty trucks, because of that, will essentially continue to age and become more costly to repair every year. We still have some trucks that are up 20 years old. We're getting closer. We've made great progress on that in the last few years, working with Paul Adams on the budget, but we still have trucks that are that old, and they start to have bigger and bigger issues, problems. You know, the repairs are 10,000, 20,000 instead of, you know, 800 here or 1,000 there for typical maintenance. And then with the aging of the fleet comes the potential increase for breakdowns and a major snow event, which threatens our ability to serve the public and provide safe roadways. If our trucks are old and don't function properly, we would fall behind and have unsafe roads, which is pretty much our whole goal, is to avoid that at the department. It's the primary function. So things that, you know, are kind of being done right now that affect change is a lot of coordination. Communicating the negative impacts to our state and local officials. Coordinating other municipalities on strategies. I've already talked with a few different towns, the town of Gates, the town of Barrington, and some of them have already started to reach out on this communication, come up with different strategies. Work with the New York State truck dealers. I know our dealers that we deal with are open to being creative and thinking outside the box in the short term. We just haven't came to any actual action plans yet. Haven't come up with the right combination. Obviously support the automotive and trucking organizations in their efforts to lobby for change. Work with Monroe County and the Highway Superintendents Association to lobby for change, which I'm a member of and we work with. It's a great group. I think we'll continue to start to push on this and work through it, and that's a lot of why I'm presenting this tonight, is to sort of start that movement, start that coordination, start the conversation about this, something about this needing to change in order for municipalities in New York to function. And then at some point, there could be the potential to pass resolutions related to the topic to strengthen the call for change. I don't know what those are yet. I don't have examples, but obviously might be something that is needed in order to solidify the situation and maybe make a change. So with those limitations and being told that we can't order some of the trucks that we had budgeted for and planned on, what I initially have started to do is look for in-stock items. So items that are already delivered now or will be 2024 model year that won't fall into this restriction, and therefore we can purchase them and register them the way we're supposed to. So for this year, I found one piece so far. It's a large piece of equipment, but we think it's going to have a major impact on our ability to do some of the maintenance that we just talked about in the MS4 program, as well as help us with our roadway excavation. There's more and more utilities in our roadways, along our roadways between high-speed fiber optics and things of that nature, that a lot of the excavation we do is hard to do traditionally, and you have to use hydro excavation in a lot of these areas in order to not hit utilities, cable lines, gas lines, all things of that nature that are intertwined with our infrastructure. So we had budgeted, and it's in the preliminary budget, for a new vac truck for the highway department. It'll serve twofold, like I said, drainage, highway. It'll replace our current water truck that we go around and fill up our rollers and mills with water. So we have found one of those that is in stock. And the price for it is a little over $500,000. It's off the Sourcewell contract that allows us to purchase it without separate bid. And then we would the plan that we've discussed with Paul Adams of the finance is to utilize remaining money for a six-wheel dump truck that we're trying to order right now for this year, which is right around 314,000. I have to confirm that number with Paul, which is why it says plus or minus. So utilize that money that we can't order the truck intended for it, and then transfer the balance out of the drainage fund. So we have the special drainage district, which does have its own fund that builds up. So the way we are proposing to purchase this truck that is on the ground that we can take delivery of as soon as we cut the PO is to pay for the little over $500,000 piece of equipment that was scheduled for next week, do it now, utilize existing budget of $314,000, and then Paul has an organizational way to utilize about $187,000 of the special drainage district fund to pay for the balance of that, to take this truck that we can now, knowing it might be some time before we can order our traditional dump trucks in that portion of the budget. So that is my update on this situation.
So I find it quite ironic where the legislation was originally developed and implemented in California and was adopted in New York 2021, it gets implementation in 2025. Seems to me that our downstate legislators forgot one thing that they were comparing when they adopted this legislation that was initiated in California. It's called snow. So this could have a crushing blow on all municipalities in New York State. So it's good to see that, you know, people are getting together, legislators, because this legislation really is going to have to change.
Yeah, there were some conversations with the town of Gates that spoke about making an exception.
Right.
And the comment back to that was, this is not an exception. When you have 100% of the municipalities in New York State that are affected, it's not an exception. It
Right.
needs to be a change in the rule. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's what you just said, that
Right.
everywhere in New York State plows snow. California, it's very limited, you know, so
Yeah.
it's a
I
big
had
issue.
no idea about this, Pat, so I really appreciate you making this presentation to get the awareness out there.
Yeah, it's very new
Because
to
it's really
us.
important that people in this state start calling their legislators and saying, you know, you need to take a look at this and reverse it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thank
it's
you
gonna
for that.
affect,
There's a phenomenon known in sociology, I'm going way back now to my college days, but it's called cultural lag, and that's where the material culture outstrips the non-material culture. This is just the opposite. Here you have, the technology's not available, but you have a political impetus to move ahead with programs that are really not realistic or functional. And it's just, I emphasize what John said. I mean, you have some, well, we'll just say it's interesting that it's California and New York, right? Of all the states that are pushing this, when the technology is really not there.
not for these, you know, I think some of your different uses, buses, over-the-road things, there's starting to be technology that might be viable for those operations, but not for the municipality operations, which is, you know, it's just a key component to public safety.
No, it's
So
a
there's-
pipe dream at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's areas that you can make some progress. And the other frustrating part that's in a lot of the documentation I've seen is that these diesel vehicles that we're using are 99% more clean than, you know, 10 years ago. So the
Yeah.
technology on the diesel use and the DEF and the different programs like that has come very long ways
Yeah.
and is excellent. But it's still, you know, not what, this doesn't address
Well,
that.
a clean and zero emissions
Yeah.
technology are not necessarily the
Right.
same.
No,
Actually, sadly, it's not unbelievable.
No, you know, and I-
It's just another step.
I think the board knows, maybe they don't. My brother Jeff owns a company called Wise Home Energy.
Yeah.
And so they install commercially and residentially cold climate heat pumps, which is, you know, changing everything to electric in your house, you know, for whatever. And, you know, a lot of the things that they do, they get the incentives from New York State with NYSERDA and all that. And so he has a real, he's in the trenches on this thing. And he tells me all the time that there's no way that the grid, there's no plans
Right.
to get to the grid to the
Right.
point
Yep.
to handle all this.
Right.
And the story you told about the 2-hour charge when it was cold, he's told me dozens and dozens of stories. He's in the industry. He doesn't have anything against efficient electricity and all that stuff. I think rational people are like, hey, you know what? As time goes on, hey, we should make moves away from fossil fuels and this and that. But we shouldn't make moves away from it in a week,
Right.
because there are things that need to be put into place. And we have a microcosm right here in Webster because, you know, we got Coke Fairlife going in, and Tessie bought all that land and buildings from Xerox. And one of the biggest problems is at RG&E, there's not enough power to handle all that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still somewhat trying to figure out how to get that power to that area of town, just to power that industry that's gonna be in there. So, I don't know, but we know this, you know, and hey, unfortunately, Jenny, John, and myself, we're elected officials. That doesn't mean that we are experts on things. And sometimes, you know, the state assembly, the state, well, ideas have consequences. And it sounds great, and I think everybody would like cleaner energy and this and that, but if you go in and you put in, you vote it in, and now you say you gotta have it in 10 years, now you start to, whatever you just said in Latin.
Well, I know,
Wait, wait,
there was
wait,
English, but cultural lag, right.
Right, how do we get to that point?
But, you know, and this is, and you mentioned this earlier, this is also an unfunded mandate effectively, right?
Yep.
I mean, it
Yeah.
really is.
Sure.
I mean, down the
I
road, it's
mean-
going to be, it's, you know.
Well, it's a perfect example of putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
I don't want, if anybody, we don't have a lot of people in the room tonight, but maybe there's 1 million people watching live and there'll be 10 million watchers on tape. I can only speak for myself, I'm not gonna speak for the other town board members. I'm not against electric and all of that stuff. What I'm against is not proper planning and foundationally making sure you can get to that point in the years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, that you just voted on as a state assembly or whatever. Because that's, to me, it's irresponsible. So you either, like you said, John, you're educated people. Anybody that got elected, they're educated people. Go back, look at these realities, pull it back.
Yep.
Somebody's gotta make the vote, the proposal, whatever, pull it back. And unfortunately, I think we just have such a polar in politics that it's like, oh, yeah, because you're a big, you know, coal guy and whatever. No, that's not what we're saying. It's just not gonna be ready. I'll get off my soapbox. Jenny, do you have anything on this?
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
I know I don't know why we always copy in California and follow
Yeah.
the laws there. We're in New York. We're New Yorker,
Yeah.
so.
Ironically, there's, I think, Ford Motor Company and another car manufacturer are actually shutting down their manufacturing of electric vehicles because the sales are just not there anymore. I heard that on the news recently.
Well,
Uh-huh.
They're losing tens of millions of dollars. So,
And also, the cold too would drain a lot of the batteries. You know,
Yeah.
You're right, you know, you can do it in the summer for a certain amount, but then in the winter, you're gonna cut more than just half.
yeah, between the cold and the
As
equipment,
always,
you
yeah.
know, the heavy equipment makes a big draw, so.
Well, the triumvirate, or whatever it's called there, Charlie, the last thing tonight, guess what? Pat Stevens,
Last one, I
our
promise.
esteemed highway superintendent. Status of the highway facility, project budget, and discussion on the potential to complete the salt bar replacement portion of the project. You're up, Pat.
Thank you. Okay. So this is our first update on the project since it started last August, so I'm kind of excited to do this. A lot of interesting stuff in here, and then kind of at the tail end of it, we want to discuss, you know, possible options of other things we can do now, given the status we were at. And we sort of discussed it when we came in to talk about it, when we were going through the budget review, approval, and adjustments, that this was a possibility that we would come back here, but we wanted to be farther along in the project before we proposed reincorporating some stuff into the budget. So the picture up here, I'll just say I took this yesterday morning. So we've now gone from a rendering of the building to this is what it actually looks like today. So it's pretty exciting, come along, it's ahead of schedule, so pretty happy with that. It looks very much like the picture, but that's a real one of the rendering. So project update, the main building construction is about 75% complete. We're projected for substantial completion in January, in January of 2025. I lost my words. Which is about 3 to 4 months ahead of schedule. They're going to start doing some turnover in November, so this is actually a pretty conservative date. Hopefully we don't have any other issues being this far along in the completion. We shouldn't. The Cliff Jones upgrades, which is utilities and sprinklers, are about 95% complete. So those are the original components. The next few pieces I put together, what I tried to do so that people could go back and reference the original budgets was basically keep it in a very similar format to what we had before. So this is a very similar breakdown. The difference here is the way things were contracted is the new building and Cliff Jones were done as one contract. So we had those broken out in the original proposal in the budget. Now they're in one line item under one contract. What we have here is that we're currently contracted and on track for the new highway building and Cliffy Jones improvement to be $17,380,948. Our current projected incidentals, let me see if this works, which is significantly below what was originally budgeted, if you look at that item. Project incidentals, must have skipped it. They're at projected at 3.8 million, which is actually slightly higher than what we had originally projected. The two key components to that is there was lifts for the internal building purchased off state contract, which we didn't have broken out in a separate line item. So in order to incorporate them and compare apples to apples, I put them in here. The other portion that ran slightly higher on that was the utility coordination. We had to relocate, I think, 5 different companies on a set of wires that ran through the middle of where the building is. And each of them had a relocation fee to move those wires around to get to the cell tower in the back. And that ended up being a little bit more than we had anticipated. So that's why those are the two main reasons that incidental number is slightly higher than we had originally projected. At this point in the project, we're keeping a contingency, but it's not nearly as big as it was originally because of the percentage that we are complete. There's just less risk to the finish. This number is pretty conservative, though, based on what we have left and what could go wrong. So that's what we're currently holding for a contingency. And as you can see, that total there is significantly lower than we'd originally projected. The approved bond amount for the project, based on what these numbers were originally, is $28,250,000. But right now, we believe we're going to come in right around that $21,629,000 range, which is basically $6,620,367 under the bonded amount.
Pat, before you move on to the next slide, I
Yes.
just was wondering if you could explain to those who may not be aware, what is exactly is project incidentals and also project contingency?
Yep. So project incidentals are costs that we know we're going to incur, but they're not related to the asset, to the construction of the building. So they're things like engineering, furniture purchases, equipment purchases, things of that nature, paying RG&E for the new gas service, paying Monroe Water Authority for the gas. It's like $15,000 for them to tap the line. So it's sort of fees, legal fees that might come in. We had some insurances that we picked up at a certain point for once the building was up in that. The term that might be used would be soft cost, things of that nature,
Right.
but then in combination with some actual equipment and our furniture budget's in there. So that's
Thanks.
the incidental budget. So our construction oversight from campus management is in there, and our design for MRB, which were the two biggest part of that. They represent almost 3/4 of this amount. So our design, engineering, and construction oversight are in that. Contingency is essentially typically a percentage of the project that is held for unforeseens.
Right.
So these are the costs that you can't see. You know, all those things I just mentioned, you know that they're there, they're possible, they're tangible enough to put a number to. Contingency is for the things that aren't tangible, the things that are hidden, the things that can't be found. And, you know, this was originally 1.2 million, a little over 1.2 million, which
Right.
was 5% of the project. And now that we're this far along and complete, we haven't had to eat into that in a drastic way. So we've adjusted this.
So what happens to that 425,000 if you do not use any more of it?
Then we never borrow against it, right?
Okay.
So it doesn't get spent. That's how we ended up this far under, is by not spending the allowable amount. And that's pretty much been my goal since we started. I spend a lot of time on it, try to really watch every little thing we can do, and self-perform. We've had a few things where we got a price on something that had to be adjusted, and it was something that we could complete ourselves, so we didn't, add that cost in there. So yep, at the end of the day, what we thought we might have to bond and borrow 28 million on, we won't be borrowing that amount.
Right.
So that debt won't go against the town or the taxpayers. It'll be dramatically less.
Yeah, all right, that's all I had.
Okay, is that,
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt your
no,
presentation.
that's fine. I just want to make sure I answered it.
No, you didn't.
Okay. So at this time, given that budget update, we wanted to revisit the scope. So our current scope covers the large building, the 82,000 square foot building that has truck parking, maintenance bays, staff facilities, and office space, as well as the Cliff Jones upgrade, which includes putting sprinklers in the entire building, which is huge for, that roughly $3 million asset to not have sprinklers. Was very unfortunate, so we were able to correct that. So what we want to revisit is the original scope, the February 9th, 2023 presentation for what was needed at the facility included replacement of the existing salt barn. It was removed to ensure that the bid package, was as minimal as possible, and that for budget protection was the only reason the salt barn replacement was removed prior to bid. The salt barn is 40 years old. It was built in the 80s. It's approaching the end of its useful life. The new barn would be built out of more corrosion-resistant materials. It would be slightly larger to hold some additional salt, which reflects the growth of the town since the 80s when the other building was built. And the existing barn, given it does have some useful life left and it's not completely gone, we would keep it and reutilize it for dry storage, like topsoil, which is huge in the spring of the year when we're doing lawn repairs and different stuff like that. To have some dry materials that aren't affected by the weather would be big. So we do plan to continue to use the existing building until it is fully used its lifespan, and it needs to be torn down, which we hope is a few more years, but we're not sure exactly how long, but not that long. And then, so we want to discuss the additional, one additional scope item as well. Recently, I mentioned earlier that EPA audit that we had. It was noted by the EPA agents that our current practice of wrenching out the large debris and dirt out of the back of the trucks on the yard and having it sort of flow directly into the drainage ditch could use improvement. Along with that, we do a lot of washing out of salt in the back of the trucks in the wintertime, which is extremely cold when we do it outside. So we have looked at a smaller building where we could house some of the hoses and different things to do the heavy debris washout of the trucks in a small enclosed building. We want to consider adding that now, given where we stand with the budget. So we'll get into the specifics of those a little bit more as I move along here. So the proposed scope and improvements that are involved with the salt barn are kind of depicted here in a site plan. The salt barn would be wood framed with a steel lean-to structure, have concrete push walls along the bottom. Currently they're wood. We would switch them to concrete, which are more resistant. There'd be improved lighting, improved functionality given the location and orientation of the building, increased storage capacity, and then updated utilities, be it drainage and things of that nature. The truck washout building, the proposed location for the new salt barn is actually in the footprint of the existing building, which is scheduled for demo anyway at a certain point because it is past its useful life or very, very much at the end of it. So that footprint there allows the existing salt barn to stay to the upper right-hand and the footprint of the new salt barn, which does have the lean-tos all the way on three sides of it, is over the rear end of the existing main building. They're kind of in the middle of the site. The new truck washout we would have kind of in line with as you're heading to the entrance for the new building. That's all the way at the bottom of the screen there. So you'd be able to pass through that, get the big debris out of your truck, and then go enter in the building where you do the traditional washing at the end of each shift. Having that building would improve water quality. It'd allow us to treat the water and be more compliant with our MS4. It would be more efficient washout. We would have some stairs in there and different things where the safety of it could be improved. Sometimes there's still times where we're getting up on ladders and things to spray off the top of the truck. This could have those areas incorporated into it. Improve winter operations, and then reduce maintenance in the plumbing inside the building. So we do have wash bays inside the building, but if we were to utilize those for the heavy debris, like the dirt that's in the back of the truck, they would clog up, fill up much faster. We'd be sending more water down the sewer. So those would be improvements associated with the truck washout building as well. We have preliminary budgets on these. We haven't had our construction manager do full estimates. This quantity or dollar value for the salt barn here is what was used in the earlier presentations that was eliminated to try to help us stay under budget. That's 1.7 million estimated. The truck washout, we haven't gone through design yet because it's been kind of a new thought of an improvement that we'd like to do to improve the facility. We've got that in there estimated at 750,000. And then if we're looking at the total budget that we would want to use, we would have an incidental line in there for fees associated with the building, much like I described earlier. So it's estimated currently at approximately $2.7 million to reincorporate these portions and add the truck washout building. The picture there is a picture of the locker room, which is actually pretty cool. It's one of the features that has gotten installed in the existing building now that everybody's really excited about, the larger lockers for the guys' gear. They're 2x2, and they add a pop of color to the room. So that's the current locker room in the new main building that we're heading toward the end of construction on.
So could you just go back one slide, please?
Yeah, back one more, or?
No, that's good.
Okay.
So the original estimate for the salt barn, when was that done?
So that was back at the start of this construction. It would have been summer last year when we were getting ready to bid.
So that's
maybe.
probably still a pretty good.
Yeah, it's not way
accurate
off. We've, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of things have normalized a little bit, have been
Yeah.
a lot more flat in the last 12 months than they were in the construction industry the past 2 years, where they were jumping, large percentages annually.
Right.
We haven't seen that as much this year, so I don't think it's far off, but obviously we want to put it through the rest of our consultants to make sure before we do anything. This is just to sort of get a feel for if it's feasible to do this undertaking now, and then we would be coming back, with any adjusted different things to make final decisions on whether or not it moves forward. Good?
Yeah, so do you have rough drawings for the truck washout building or incidentals?
Not for the truck, and then the incidentals I haven't pulled. It's more of a percentage. It's almost like a contingency at this
Yeah.
point. The truck wash we have not begun to design just because it really became apparent of the need
Right.
more recently in June when we had the audit. So I haven't done anything on that, but the salt barn itself is 95% designed. We included that in the design package for the main building because
Great.
it was in the original scope. So the design on that building is just needs a tune-up.
Nice.
So that's design's in good shape, not so much for the truck washout.
Thanks, Pat.
So the benefits to contract now, which is why I'm presenting it now, is that, the cost of labor and materials is always increasing. Each year that goes by, it will go up. I just said it didn't go up very much this past year, but over the course of 5 or 10 years, it will continue to go up inevitably. That there's no doubt about that. So therefore, this is the cheapest time to ever do it. It will cost more in the future. Construction management efficiency. So we currently have construction oversight contracts with Campus and with MRB. If the timing of this was to work out where we could bid it over the winter, which is a great time to bid, we wouldn't have to add on to those professional services contracts. They would be able to,
Really?
because we're finishing early, because we're 4 months ahead of schedule, they've basically said that they would stay on or segment the months that they had accounted for in the price
That's fantastic.
to cover this, which could be a considerable amount.
Right. And so that construction is under Wick's law, it's not under energy performance, correct?
Oh, no, yeah, this is all
Because
bid
I know energy
projects.
performance gets paid on a percentage of the overall project.
Absolutely
whereas
not.
Wick's
No,
doesn't.
every single one of these
Yeah,
is bid. The professional services, we try to get 3 or 4
Right.
prices because we don't have to do the formal bid. But everything on this project, we chose to go with a traditional bid and
No,
award.
and I totally
process.
agree, if they're gonna, do it at no cost or minimal cost, they're still on site, they don't have to remobilize, and they, I would assume, could use some of the same contractors that are working there currently, so they don't have to remobilize. So I concur.
Yeah, there's a
wholeheartedly.
lot of efficiencies. You know, they've
Correct.
indicated that. Number 4 here is exactly what you just said, motivated contractors from the current project.
Right.
Right, so somebody's there, you know how they're gonna bid that. I think we could have some very competitive bid numbers if the people that are already on site are interested. There's efficiencies for them, right? Very
Sure,
real ones.
absolutely.
So then site layout, timing, we have a very clean cut site where there's a lot of knowns, not a lot of unknowns,
Right.
which makes for very competitive bidding, which is what we saw from the budget update, that we were able to capture a lot at bid time.
I think
with that
campus has done
project.
a great job out there along with your team.
It's the,
I mean,
yeah,
and the numbers reflect that.
right,
They really do.
right, yeah, and we've really put a big emphasis on the numbers because we know it's a difficult time right now. So that's why we've got this. So the final effect of what I'm proposing or putting forth here tonight, obviously, if we take the total for the current contract price, which includes the incidentals and the contingency, and then we incorporate the salt barn, the truck washout, and the incidentals that I've currently accounted for that, we think that the total expense would be right around 24 million, 24,350. If that's the case, then we would still be able to turn the project back in without utilizing the 28,250,000. We would still be tracking or projecting right now to be 3,899,000 underneath that bond approval after completing this component. So we like to do next steps on this. We kind of already talked about it a little bit, but based on the status of each of the components that I just mentioned, the salt barn, we would need to enter a professional services contract to finalize the design because it's already mostly complete, and then develop the bid documents. We would have to advertise for bid, and then award and construct. For the truck washout, because it is a new piece to the puzzle, there'd be some minor adjustments. We'd have to go out professional services to get the design of the building and create bid docs. We would have to amend the current bond language to incorporate the talk of an exterior wash bay building, and then there'd be a minor seeker amendment. The seeker amendment wouldn't change the effectiveness of the project because it's on the same footprint. It's over an existing building, so it would have no material changes in what was happening. And the bond amount really is language, not dollars changed. And then we would have to bid and construct it. And that is the current rendering of the proposed barn. It's very similar style to what we have now. Like I said, just updated, given the other one's 40 years old. So questions and comments that are overlaid on that is the current interior of the building. Standing on the mezzanine in the maintenance bay, and starting to see the floor pours go in the parking stalls facing east. So it's exciting.
It's impressive. The picture doesn't tell the whole story, though. I mean,
No.
you really need to walk in there to see the magnitude of that building.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to getting done, and then I think we're gonna do another round of tours to,
Yeah.
open it up to the public, and get some people to go through it and really check it out. It's awesome.
So,
I ran over.
kind of a funny story that happened in the last week, and Pat, I think you know about it. A guy by the name of Barry Dean, maybe a lot of you guys know him, he worked for the town for 50 years.
Heard that
was a
guy's
town
name
board
someplace.
Member for 12 years, was the highway superintendent, I think, for 15 years. Barry's a great guy, he has a bat phone to me. When he calls, I answer. I respect my elders, and he called me, and he said, what is this thing, this salt barn and whatever, what's going on there? And I said, well, Barry, because he was skeptical and all that. I said, you know what you should do? Why don't you go see Pat? Go get a tour of the place, talk to Pat. So did he take you up on that, Pat?
He did. I met up and took a walk with him
I think it was last
last week.
Thursday, Friday?
Yep, Thursday afternoon.
And then about an hour after he took that tour with you and he asked you a bunch of questions about this, he called me and he said, you should definitely go forward with that salt barn and that wash station. I said, well, I'm glad to hear that, Barry. For all the reasons that,
Right.
So that Pat gave. The good news is that this is a bid thing, that if we proceed on, if we give the blessing for these next steps, if the bids come in higher than what we have an appetite for, then we don't accept the bids and we don't move forward with it. I think, Charlie, we can do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have, I would hope we don't have to do that, but that's, if the bids come in a lot higher than what we thought they were, then the board decides not to accept them and.
Well, and
that's
Pat will
that.
have a more accurate projection as the cost as, you know, they move forward with the drawings, and Charlie's question goes to you, to allow Patrick to move ahead with the engineering drawings and what's required, we need to put that in a resolution, I would assume, or no?
Well, yeah, but you're talking
Yeah.
about keeping it within the same ambit of expenses that have already been approved?
Yeah, so we wouldn't have to increase the bond amount.
Yeah,
We would
that's
have
what
to
I
come
mean.
in to
That's what I
award the
mean, no,
contract. So
yeah.
we would do professional services, we'd get prices for the
Right.
engineering.
Gotcha.
That would be the only thing we'd have to expend.
Well, no, if there's a new
upfront.
contract, yes, but you've already,
Well,
Cross
I'm
it.
gonna
No,
guess
for,
there's
for
some
this,
resolution
for this
on
change in
October 3rd.
scope, my question
Yeah.
is to allow Pat to go out and get these drawings and to get some, so they have more accurate prices. Do we need to pass a resolution to that effect, because
That's a
it's,
great
but it's,
question.
but it's still under the bond amount?
Yeah.
yes,
That's
yes.
my
Oh, yeah,
question.
of course.
And I
of
think that
course,
would be
yeah,
October 3rd.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
And
the
now I
idea, is
just need to
depending on
make
the
sure that
feedback
we-
tonight, we could come October 3rd with
Yeah.
Right.
that component. Yep.
I'd say, yeah, I would say yes.
Yep. Well, how about that timing, Deneen?
Terrific.
We're done with the workshop. I guess you have to turn off the tape, Mark, because to differentiate between the workshop meeting and, how you doing, gang? How's it going?
Do you want to hang around for any of the fill permit or the license agreement stuff, or are you good with it?
No, you've already responded. No,
Okay.
no, we're good. I don't foresee a problem with any of them.
Okay, yeah, there isn't any issues, I wouldn't have really anything to add, so.
Nope.
Does anybody want to take the podium during the open the public 5 minutes portion of the meeting? You got anything to say? You should. Okay. Change your mind, you let me know. Too bad, you got a little off track a few times. This is a school. Do you want to take the podium? You know? Well, Deneen, my sales skills stink. I couldn't convince anybody to take the podium. Sales skills stink. That's terrible.
Oh, you know it.
Alrighty. So John and Ginny, I wonder, now that Jennifer's not coming.
No, her
Yeah.
father's getting surgery, I think her mother was in the hospital too. And her sister's going to be with her mother,
Okay.
and Jennifer's with her dad.
I don't wanna make things confusing. I would have probably had Ginny sit next to Charlie just to make it like centralized, but this is fine. And purposely, I had a low, not a lot on the agenda because we knew that, Patty wasn't gonna be here. So just so we all know, I think this is all low-hanging fruit stuff, but,
So we can
everything
sit
got
through it.
past 3-0.
Let's sit through it.
You bet, my friend.
All right.
I promised Denise she'd be home to her family by 8:15. She's got a long ride,
Where do you live? A long way away from here?
longer than your
Far,
ride.
far away, a distant land.
Wow.
All right, whenever
Over an
Mark
hour?
says we can rock.
Are we gonna put a little wager on this, or no?
No, I don't, I'm not messing with you tonight,
All right.
all right? I just hope everything passes 3-0. Will you let me know, Mark? Okay. Well, that's not bad, 7:33. Well, welcome everybody to the Thursday, September 19th Webster Town Board meeting. The Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Deneen, can you do roll, please?
Supervisor Flaherty,
Here.
Councilman Cahill,
Here.
Councilwoman Nguyen. Here. Town Attorney Genesi.
Present.
Okay, our first agenda item tonight is the open to the floor section, where each speaker will be allowed up to 5 minutes to speak on anything they wanted. We went around the room before the beginning of the meeting, and we had no takers. Has anybody changed their mind? Okay. Then the next item up is the minutes to be considered for approval from the September 5th Town Board meeting. I've reviewed them, and I make a motion that we accept them.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Nguyen.
Aye.
I know somebody pinch hit for somebody this week.
Yes, I
Is
am.
that you, Jenny?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I have reviewed the bills with the financial director, and I believe they are in order. So I make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Councilman Nguyen,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye. And then I reviewed the prepaid warrants as submitted by Paul Adams, the Director of Finance. Make a motion that we approve those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilman Nguyen,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill.
Aye.
And then I also reviewed the purchase orders as submitted by Paul Adams, the Director of Finance, and make a motion that we approve those.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilman Nguyen.
Aye.
We're zipping, aren't we, Denise?
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
All right, let's not get off track.
Well, you are the liaison to this department. You want to do it, Jen?
No.
Okay. Well, I am going to make a motion to set the public hearing for the Town of Webster's 2025 preliminary budget for October 17th, 2024.
So-
And to have that advertised in the Webster Herald's, would that be Wednesday the 9th edition, or is it Wednesday the 2nd of October's edition? No less than 10, no more than 20, or no more than 10? Public hearing on the budget.
I believe it's, well, I believe it's 10 to 20.
Then we're gonna do it in the October 2nd Webster Herald. And you know what? Just to be safe, and the October 9th Webster Herald.
Good idea.
If you want
How
to
about
hold,
that?
if you want to hold on 1 second, I can double check here on this particular one.
Shame on me for not having noticed that this resolution didn't have the advertising date.
How about we just publish it according to law, as required by law? Is that fine, or do you want to still publish it in both?
I don't mind publishing it in both.
Okay. Go with
All right,
it
that's
then.
I'm fine with that, so I'll
Public
second
hearing.
that motion.
Okay,
That's why I didn't do the original one.
you're smart. I stumbled on that, huh?
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilman Nguyen.
Aye.
And just for the record, and, you know, this is not a shot against the Webster Herald. They have their subscribers, very loyal subscribers, and people will see this. The Webster Today, which goes out to every house in the town of Webster, the October edition will hit people's houses, their mailboxes, I think, between October 2nd and 5th. And it's the budget edition, so it really highlights all over it that the public hearing is the 17th, and inviting people to comment, call in, email us about questions they have, but also come to the public hearing. So, little sidebar. Now, the gentleman in the back, I told you we wouldn't make you wait long. I just want to make sure I got the wording right.
Tom,
Yeah,
we got to vote on that, don't we?
I think we did just vote on the preliminary budget.
Okay,
didn't we?
Yeah.
all right, good,
Yeah.
all right. Just double check.
But the next item up, the license agreement for the replacement of a utility shed and a drainage easement, I just wanna see, cause I saw, is it Mike? Yes, sir. Yep. Mike, if you wanna jump up to the podium for a second, because I think this is gonna be a walk in the park for you, cause I saw the letter before from the highway that was
Yeah.
fine with it. There it is, yeah. Pat Stevens, our superintendent of highways, wrote a letter to the board saying he's fine with it. He came out and saw it. So, do any of the board members have any questions about that?
No, I just have a comment that I really appreciate the fact that Pat goes out and meets with our residents and makes these recommendations, because it's obviously right in his wheelhouse,
Yeah.
so.
So you're gonna get handed off, Mike, from Pat, and you're about to enter the Charlie Genesi world in a second. We'll get to that once we vote on this. So, Jenny, any comments or questions on this? Well, I make a motion to approve a license agreement for the placement of a utility shed in a drainage easement located at 860 Buttermilk Circle, tax account number 094.06-1-10.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye?
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Nguyen.
Aye.
All right, Charlie. So for those at home, Charlie is now talking to Mike about the process of them getting together and doing the proper filings within the county and all that stuff so he can do it. Being, building the shed in one of our drainage easements.
Yes, sir. Okay? Thank you, sir.
So I won't describe it as much because I'm sure that you're here for the license agreement of the fence in a sanitary sewer easement. Oh my goodness, then there's 3 of these tonight. Wow. Okay, so the next one is, I want to make sure this is,
I think it's
Ethan? Okay. Ethan, and you, if you want to take the podium, so this is a resolution to approve a license agreement for the placement of a fence in a sanitary sewer easement. I take it located, Ethan, at your property at 1436 State. Deja vu. Any questions? Because I know that Art, I think, wrote the letter on this one, right? Our sewer department. Oh, I saw it. Yeah, Art.
Yeah, it also contains a short environmental assessment form, which has been completed.
Yes, we can find all.
Seems to be in order.
Yeah,
I have no questions.
okay. Well, then I'm gonna make a motion to approve a license agreement for the placement of a fence in a sanitary sewer easement located at 1436 State Road, tax account number 080.04-1-35.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye?
Councilwoman Nguyen,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill.
Aye.
That's it?
Is it?
Ethan,
Same
Charlie?
thing. Same thing.
Charlie, you got some new best friends here, right? And while he's doing this, because we now are gonna finish the trifecta tonight, I don't know, I can't remember us ever having 3 of these on one board meeting agenda.
No.
But in layman terms, I don't know, these drainage easements and these sewer easements, there's pipes underneath, and unfortunately, even though it's the homeowner's yard and they own the land, we can't just allow them to put a shed on top of some things that we might have to get in there and do some maintenance on. So it's very important that, we just kind of make sure that they've applied for it. Our sewer department, or our highway department, our drainage people have looked at it and said, it should be okay, that it'll be out of the way if they have to dig or this and that. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. So with that being said, our next one is at 449 McEwen Drive, and this one, that was
Heather,
Ethan.
yeah, I don't have a resolution on this one. I
Wait a
didn't even
minute.
know about it until right now.
I'll make sure. Katie, right? And Katie, she brought a bodyguard, so we better not mess on this one.
This is Gina.
What's that?
This is Gina.
Well, can everybody see Gina's face and head above the podium there? So this is about a fence in a sanitary sewer easement. this is about a fence in a town drainage easement at, I take it, your home 449 McEwen.
Yes, correct.
And I saw in here, once again, that Pat Stevens, I saw it.
Yep.
It's here,
It is in there. So,
secret
I
forms.
think you probably heard from what I said to the previous gentleman. You now get handed from Pat to Charlie to paper it all up and get it all set. So, any questions, Jenny or John?
No.
Okay. Then I make a motion to approve a license agreement to locate a fence in a town drainage easement at 449 McEwen Drive, tax ID 093.06-1-22.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye?
Councilman Cahill,
All right.
Councilwoman Nguyen.
Aye.
Now, is the fence like a fence that can be painted, and maybe as this one gets older, they'll,
I'll have to paint it.
So
I think
it's
we'll be ready.
it's a
We'll
vinyl
definitely have
fence,
to
I
paint
think.
oh, well, then I guess, no more Tom Finn, Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer stuff. I've aged myself there. All right.
Okay, so, but you'll contact that email. Okay. Oh, we perfect. Thank you so
All
much.
right, thanks for coming in. See you, bud. All right, geez, I should have bet, John, I think I would have won tonight.
Scary cat.
The next one, we only have two left, believe it or not. A bit of a milestone event. I think it was in June that we had Chris Spilo, our Parks and Rec Commissioner, came in. And we had I'll call it the unveiling, along with Fantuzzo Family Brands. Kayla, their CFO, did a presentation. The proposed design of a 2,400 square foot building that would be a restaurant, bar, pub type of thing. The town, I'll call it, Charlie would be the landlord, and Fantuzzo Family Brands would be the private operator. Now, we said back in June, as the process moves along, this is kind of one of those milestone things that we now need to go out, and as Councilman Cahill said earlier, this is Wick's law. So we need to go and advertise the bid packages. I think there's 4 of them. I want to say it's general contracting, HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. And they'll be advertised in the Webster Herald, but as John, you know this better than me because you're in the business, development, construction, whatever. It'll also be sent to where the developers all look for projects to bid on municipally.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's a sealed bid. And you might get 4 bids, you might get 8 bids, you never know. And then,
So
I think
are the drawings done for this? To send this out to bid, or we're sending
oh,
it
yeah,
up?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So,
Are they 100% done or
Somewhat,
80% done?
well, when you say the drawings, Campus and Passero have put together, this is the different line items they think that of estimated cost on those 4 that I just described, general contracting. which,
Okay.
Nice. And I don't want to get too granular, but a lot of concrete, helical pilings that the
Right.
DEC is making us put in, the building shell, the type of roof that you have to have, and it's really got to be supported because it's got a roof top. It's a 2,400 square foot building, but let's not kid ourselves. The design that is put out there has about 1,000 square feet up top where people can sit. So John, as you know,
Right.
the design and what that entails compared to a pitched roof,
Mm-hmm.
it's not gonna have anything on it except for maybe snow and rain, a little different. So now we gotta go and bid it to see, well, what is it come in at? Because we need to know what the low bids are, because that's gonna dictate just how much this project's gonna cost. And at the end of the day, it's a public-private partnership, and foundational to that is that If we have to go and get a bond to pay $1 million or $2 million to build this building based on the low bids and whatever, that whatever that bond cost, we have to get that money back for the taxpayers from the private restaurateur. Is that a good way to describe it, Charlie?
Yeah. I'm glad to hear you say that.
The restaurateur, well, I think I've been pretty consistent on that in articles I've written and in any communication I've had with any of restaurateurs and bar owners going back to the expression of interest back in early 2022, when 8 to 10 restaurateurs looked at doing this, and the only one that came in with a formal reply in April of 22 was the guys who owned the Bayside Pub. And Chris Bilo and I, our Parks and Rec Commissioner, met with the owners of the Bayside Pub 5 or 6 times between April of 22 and October of 22. And that was really big part of our conversation. You can be involved in designing the kind of building you want to operate in, restaurateur, bar owner, but be careful what you choose. You gild it with gold, and you make us go out and pay for it, Wick's Law, low bid. Know that if it cost $1 million, here's the bond, this is the interest rates, whatever, that's what you got to pay. Monthly rent, annual, whatever.
Right.
And what ended up happening in that situation in October of 22, the owners of the Bayside, we came to an impasse, I'll call it, that the estimated cost of what the building they wanted, which was a 2,400 square foot with a pitched roof, not a roof on top, and their features that they wanted was going to cost the shell and whatever $1 million, let's say. They were going to put in, I think it was $600,000 of leasehold improvements to go in and build the inside.
Right, build out.
And I want to say the bond at that time was going to be costing like $7,000 to $8,000 a month.
Right.
All right. And they said, you know what? We can't make a profit at that. We can only pay $3,000 a month rent. And it was like, yeah, but it's going to cost us $7,000 or $8,000
Right.
a month in principal and interest on the bond. Well, we can only afford $3,000 a month. Okay, I respect that you can only afford $3,000 a month. I take it at your face value that that's all you can pay and make this a viable business. You're in a for-profit business. I respect that. But I hope you respect that our job is to make sure that the taxpayers' dollars on this, a municipal-built building, public-private partnership. The public part is we built the building. We need the private entity to be paying us in some semblance of rent, licensing, percentage of their proceeds, however you want to do it. Something that gets us where we can say to the taxpayers, we're getting your money back on this. We are not enriching a private company with taxpayer money. We've been very consistent about that. Mm-hmm. That's why that deal fell apart in October of 2022. I respected the fact that they say pay more than that, and they needed to respect the fact that unless you want to truncate down this 2,400 square foot building to 1,600 square foot, which is how big the old Bayside was, and you want to redesign this so we can get the price down for the taxpayers to an amount that you as a bar owner, restaurateur will be okay with paying monthly, if we're not going to go down that path, then this deal's dead. And it was. And that was 2 years ago. And we reached back out to the 7 or 8 restaurateurs and that had shown interest earlier that year, and we said, hey, we've gone down the path with this group. There's an impasse. Are any of you still interested? And in January, February of 23, a couple of those restaurateurs said, yes, we are. We spent 6-7 months with them, and by July or August of 23, one of them said, you know what, due diligence, I'm bowing out. And the one that said, I'm still interested is Fantuzzo Family Brands. And when they said they were still interested in July, August of 23, that's when the rubber hit the road, that they started spending money on design. They started spending money, their own money, on an architect designing a building that they wanted in their vision. And when they said it was 2,400 square foot, and they worked a little bit with Campus Construction Management in Passero, We said, well, here's the thing. If you really are serious about this, which you seem to be serious, because you're spending this money with your architect, then we really need to go to the DEC and apply for a pad permit or a square footage of impervious area of 2,400 square foot. And we did that in November of '23. Now, unfortunately, it took about 5 to 6 months for the DEC to come back and approve that. So now we were into March, April of 2024. So once they came back and said 2,400 square feet was okay, we got back in with Fentuzzo Family Brands, sharpened pencils, this and that. And by June of '24, we said, we think we are at a point in this process where it's time to unveil and introduce Fentuzzo Family Brands as the restaurateur who we think we're going to go down the aisle with toward this public-private partnership. Now, since June, since we had that workshop, the last couple of months, as we've sharpened pencils and gotten estimates and bid packages put together, that culminates where we are tonight. Now, if we do this resolution, and we now will go out and advertise those bids, when the bids come back, somewhere around October 25th, I think we estimated, Deneen, is when we will sit in this room. It's a public event, and open those sealed bids. And Deneen, it'll be your first one, right?
That's correct.
And then we'll get an idea of what is the cost of the plumbing? What is the cost of the HVAC? What is the cost of the general contracting? And what was the other one?
Framing, don't forget the framing.
It's in general
That's
contracting.
very, very important.
It's in the general contract.
All right.
Yeah. And then, and I would like to think, because Fentuzzo Family Brands has been here along the whole way, I really am cautiously optimistic we won't have what happened in October of 2022 with the old owners of the Bayside, which is, well, here's what it's going to cost to build that building, now that we got the low bids. And if they come back and say, well, I'm only willing to pay this, and we have a delta there, well, what are we going to do, Charlie? Right? This isn't baseball at that point. It's not 3 strikes and you're out. We went down the path with one reputable restaurateur. The numbers didn't jive. If we go down that path with this restaurateur, and knock on wood, I don't think this is going to happen, but if that does end up happening, we're not, I mean, do we need to go back to the third? You know?
No, we
would
don't,
need
but
to,
before you make your motion, I just want to recognize that I believe I read a letter to the editor recently where someone was not really criticizing, but hadn't heard any updates on the restaurant in a while. So I appreciate the fact that you just gave the history lesson, and now hopefully people will be caught up to date. So you're very good at that, by the way.
well, it's a sickness. I can remember a lot of stuff from back, but I can't remember what I had for breakfast. But they say it's aging. There was, yes, and I want to just comment on that, John. There is so many avenues for people interested in Sandbar Park and this restaurant to go to, and they know where to go to them. Our social media pages,
Right.
what we do on communications, then the website. I can say that if we have updated this process all the way along, and it's very easy for somebody to come and say, in a letter to the editor, or come up on the podium and say, you haven't updated anybody on this. People can write that, they can say that. The reality is, I know for a fact that we have been updating people on this. And if you go back to the tape in June of that, we said we'll be back in about 3 months.
Right.
I don't know, Deneen, June to September is, I think, 3 months. So now I'm giving a little bit more detail of when, well, we're gonna be back in a month.
Yeah, 10 minutes of detail.
Yeah.
That was good.
Well, now you got an update that not only of where we've been historically on this,
Oh, yeah.
but that we will be opening bids, assuming that we get bids, somewhere in mid-October. And my guess is that based on our board schedules, that somewhere around November 7th's board meeting or November 21st board meeting, we will be back in here for either a workshop and/or resolutions pertaining to what we got as the bids.
Okay.
So, maybe I wouldn't have won the bet, John.
No, you definitely did
Any
not.
other questions or comments on this one?
I think we've exhausted all
Yeah.
the comments.
Well, I make a motion to solicit bids for the Town of Webster Sandbar Park Restaurant Construction Project and to advertise in the Webster Herald September 25th, 2024 edition.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye?
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Nguyen.
Aye.
And I will pinch hit for Deputy Supervisor Patty Cataldi, who is the liaison of the Sewer Department. I make a motion to approve the following items for auction and recycle from the Sewer Department. What do I say?
Just say the list as presented.
The list
Yes.
as presented.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilman Cahill,
Aye.
Councilwoman Nguyen.
Aye.
I don't know, the round table would be almost like a semicircle round table, but we'll do it. Jenny?
Okay, well, thanks for everyone to being here today, and please come out and support your Webster Library and the Webster Museum. They exist because of you. There's a lot of events and activities going on, so check the website. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thanks, Jenny. John?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Me too.
All right.
I'm all
Denise?
set. All set.
This meeting is adjourned.